The morning Nathaniel Zimmerman collapsed behind the counter of his general store in Tucumcari, New Mexico. The sun rose blood red over the dusty plains, and nobody thought much about omens until it was too late. Nora Zimmerman had been sorting through a shipment of canned goods in the back room when she heard the crash of breaking glass and her husband's body hitting the wooden floor. She ran to find him sprawled among scattered jars of preserves, his face already gray, one hand clutching at his chest. By the time the doctor arrived, Nathaniel was gone, leaving Nora a widow at 24 years old in the spring of 1882, with a failing business and debts she had not known existed. The funeral was well attended, as funerals in small towns always were, but sympathy did not pay bills or stock shelves. Nora stood in her black dress beside the fresh grave and listened to the preacher's words wash over her like water over stone. She felt numb, hollowed out, and terrified in equal measure. Nathaniel had been 42, nearly twice her age when they married 3 years ago, and she had been grateful for the security he offered after her parents died of fever. She had not loved him with passion, but she had respected him, cared for him, built a life with him. Now that life lay as buried as his body would soon be. The store had been struggling for months. Nathaniel had been too proud to tell her how badly. After the funeral, when Nora sat down with the ledger books, she discovered debts to suppliers in Santa Fe and Las Vegas, outstanding loans from the bank, and inventory that had not moved in seasons. The money Nathaniel left would barely cover 2 months of expenses. The vultures began circling immediately. Martin Hendricks owned the bank and half the commercial property in Tucumcari. He came to the store 3 days after the funeral, his suit too fine for the dusty street, his smile too wide for a condolence call. "Mrs. Zimmerman, I want you to know the bank is prepared to be reasonable about your late husband's debts," he said, standing too close to her in the narrow aisle between shelves. "Perhaps we could discuss terms over dinner." Nora stepped back, putting the counter between them. "I will pay what is owed, Mr. Hendricks, in full and on time." His smile did not waver, but his eyes went cold. "The note comes due in 60 days, Mrs. Zimmerman. That is $1,500. I do hope you have a plan." She did not, but she refused to let him see her fear. "Good day, Mr. Hendricks." After he left, Nora locked the door and sat in Nathaniel's chair behind the counter, surrounded by the familiar smell of tobacco, coffee, and sawdust. The store occupied a prime location on Main Street, with living quarters in the back where she and Nathaniel had made their home. Losing it meant losing everything. She could not let that happen. The next weeks blurred together in exhaustion and desperation. Nora opened the store at dawn and closed long after dark, trying to entice customers with sales she could barely afford. She rearranged displays, cleaned every corner until it gleamed, and smiled until her face ached. Some townspeople were kind, making small purchases they might not need. Others avoided her eyes, already writing her off as another widow who would have to sell and move east to live with relatives she did not have. The store's problems went beyond money. Suppliers needed to be contacted, shipments arranged, inventory managed. Nathaniel had handled all of that, keeping Nora occupied with the housekeeping and customer service while he managed the business side. She had to learn quickly, studying his ledgers late into the night, writing letters to distributors, negotiating prices she barely understood. Some suppliers refused to work with a woman. Others tried to cheat her, sending inferior goods or charging inflated prices. She discovered a shipment of tools rusting in the back corner, hardware Nathaniel had over-ordered the previous fall. She discovered bolts of fabric moth-eaten and unsellable. She discovered her husband had been a kind man but a poor businessman. too generous with credit to customers who never intended to pay, too trusting with handshake deals that meant nothing when money came due. By the end of the first month, Nora had lost 10 pounds she could not spare. Her dresses hung loose, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She stood in front of the mirror one morning, hardly recognizing the gaunt woman staring back. Her dark hair, once glossy, looked dull even when pinned up neatly. Her gray eyes, which Nathaniel had called pretty as storm clouds, looked simply tired. The store needed help she could not afford to hire. She needed someone who understood freight and suppliers, who could handle the heavy lifting, who could be a partner in rebuilding the business. She had no idea where to find such a person, or why they would work for the promise of future profits rather than immediate wages. The answer rode into town on a dusty horse one morning in early June, though Nora did not know it yet. She was struggling with a barrel of flour, trying to maneuver it from the storage room to the front when the bell above the door chimed. "Just a moment," she called, shoving the barrel with her shoulder. "It barely budged. Let me help with that, madam." The voice was deep, polite, unfamiliar. Nora straightened, pushing back the hair that had escaped her bun, and found herself looking at a cowboy. He was young, perhaps close to her own age, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of whiskey in lamplight. Dust covered his boots and the lower half of his denim pants, and he held his hat respectfully in his hands. Something about his face caught her attention, an openness there, an honesty in the direct way he met her eyes. "I can manage," she said automatically, because she had learned to refuse help that came with expectations. "Yes, madam, I expect you can," he said. "But I am needing to buy some supplies anyway, so I might as well make myself useful while I am here, if you do not mind." The logic was sound, and Nora was too tired to argue. She stepped aside. "If you would be so kind." He moved the barrel as if it weighed nothing, settling it exactly where she pointed. "Where else? There are 3 more in the back." He made quick work of them, his movements efficient and careful. When he finished, he was barely breathing hard, though Nora had struggled with just one. "What can I help you find?" she asked, moving behind the counter to the familiar safety of the transaction. "Coffee, beans, bacon, flour, ammunition for a Winchester," he said. "And I am looking for work if you know of anyone hiring. Ranch work preferably, but I can do most anything." Nora gathered his supplies, calculating the cost. "There are a few ranches outside town. The Double R might be hiring on for the summer drive. You have a place to stay. I will camp outside town tonight, head out to the ranches tomorrow." He counted out coins for his purchases, the exact amount. "Thank you for your help, Mrs. Zimmerman, Nora Zimmerman." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps. "You are the widow everyone is talking about, the one fighting to keep this place." Heat flooded her cheeks, part embarrassment, part anger. "I was not aware I was a topic of conversation." "Small town," he said simply. "People talk. For what it is worth, they are rooting for you, most of them anyway." He extended his hand. "Zachary Jennings, most people call me Zach." His hand was calloused and warm, his grip firm but brief. "Mr. Jennings." "Just Zach is fine, madam." He gathered his supplies. "Thank you for the business. I hope things work out for you." After he left, Nora found herself thinking about the cowboy more than she should. There had been no calculation in his eyes, no assessment of her as a woman alone. Just simple courtesy, the kind that was becoming rare. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. She had no time for such things. The banknote was due in 30 days, and she still had no idea how she would pay it. That evening, as she was closing up, someone knocked hard on the door. Nora peered through the window to see 3 ranch hands from one of the spreads outside town, men she recognized as troublemakers. She kept the door locked. "We are closed." "We just want some whiskey," one called. Come on, Mrs. Zimmerman, we have money. I do not sell liquor. Try the saloon. The saloon does not have your pretty face. This from another, and they all laughed. Nora's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. Good night, gentlemen. She stepped back from the door, moving toward the back room where Nathaniel's rifle hung on the wall. That is not very friendly, the first man said, and the door handle rattled as he tested it. The lady said she is closed. Nora spun toward the new voice. Zachary Jennings stood at the corner of the building, his hand resting casually on the pistol at his hip. He looked relaxed, but there was something in his posture that spoke of readiness. This is not your business, Drifter, one of the ranch hands said. I am making it my business, Zach said evenly. You boys should head on to the saloon like the lady suggested. For a moment, Nora thought there would be violence. Then the first ranch hand spat in the dust and turned away. Not worth the trouble. His friends followed, casting dark looks over their shoulders. Zach waited until they rounded the corner before approaching the door. Nora unlocked it, her hands shaking now that the danger had passed. Thank you, Mr. Jennings, that was kind of you. Just Zach, he reminded her. And it was not kindness, just decent behavior. Are you here alone every night? I live in the back, she admitted. Nathaniel always. I managed fine before tonight. Maybe before word had not spread that you are alone, Zach said quietly. Men like that, they test boundaries. You should have someone here at least in the evenings. I cannot afford to hire anyone. Zach was quiet for a moment, looking past her into the store. You need more than evening help, seems to me. This place needs a partner, someone who can handle the business side, deal with suppliers, manage the heavy work. I know exactly what I need, Mr. Jennings. Knowing and affording are different things. What if someone worked for a share? Zach said, no wages, but a percentage of the profits. When the store is back on solid ground, the arrangement could be renegotiated. Nora stared at him. Why would you do that? You do not know me. This store could fail. Could, Zach agreed. But I do not think it will, not with someone fighting as hard as you are. And to answer your question, I am tired of wandering. I have been working ranches since I was 15, following cattle trails and seasonal work. I want to stay in one place, build something. This seems like an opportunity for both of us. It was insane. She had met this man hours ago. She knew nothing about him, his past, his character, but desperation made people take chances they otherwise would not. What percentage? 30% of profits until the debts are cleared, Zach said. Then we can discuss a permanent arrangement. I will handle suppliers, freight, heavy labor, security. You keep managing customers and books, partners. I need to think about it. Fair enough. I will be camping at the creek south of town. You can find me there tomorrow if you decide yes. He tipped his hat. Good night, Mrs. Zimmerman. Nora barely slept. She lay in the bed she had shared with Nathaniel, staring at the ceiling, weighing risks and options. Taking on a partner meant sharing control, trusting a stranger with her livelihood. But trying to continue alone meant almost certain failure. By morning, exhaustion and logic had won out over caution. She found Zach at his camp, a simple arrangement under a cottonwood tree by the creek. He was shaving with a small mirror propped against a rock, his shirt hanging on a branch nearby. When he saw her approaching, he quickly pulled on the shirt, buttoning it as he walked to meet her. Mrs. Zimmerman, that was a quick decision. The banknote is due in 29 days, Nora said. I do not have time for slow decisions. If we are going to do this, we need a contract. Written terms, signed and witnessed. Agreed. And I have a condition of my own. I want to know exactly what we are up against, full accounting, every debt, every obligation. They spent the morning at the store going through the books together. Nora appreciated that Zach asked questions, but did not question her decisions or talk over her as many men would have. He had a sharp mind for numbers and a practical approach to problems. "The biggest issue is inventory," he said finally. "You are stocking too much variety that does not move and not enough of what sells fast. And these prices, they are too low. I know you are trying to compete with the other stores, but you are losing money on every sale. If I raise prices, people will shop elsewhere. Some will. Most will not, because what you have that the others do not is service and quality. This place is clean, organized, pleasant to shop in. You treat customers with respect. That is worth a few cents more on flour." They drew up a contract on paper from the store, keeping it simple but clear. 30% of net profits to Zachary Jennings in exchange for labor and business management, reviewed after all existing debts were cleared. They both signed it, then walked to the barber shop where the owner, who also served as a notary, witnessed their signatures. "You are taking on a partner?" the barber asked, not bothering to hide his surprise. "Do you think that is wise, Mrs. Zimmerman?" "I think it is necessary," Nora said coolly. "Thank you for witnessing, Mr. Peterson." News spread through Tucumcari like wildfire. By afternoon, a steady stream of customers came through, some genuinely shopping, others clearly just curious about the young cowboy working at the Zimmerman store. Nora kept her head high and her answers brief. Yes, Mr. Jennings was her new business partner. Yes, the arrangement was entirely proper. No, she did not care what anyone thought about it. Zach moved his few belongings into a small storage room off the back alley, making it into barely adequate sleeping quarters. "It is temporary," he said when Nora expressed concern about the cramped space. "Once we have money coming in, I will get a room at the boarding house." "You can take the spare room here," Nora offered, then immediately regretted it when she saw his expression. "I mean, it would be more practical. The storage room is barely big enough for a cot." "The storage room is fine," Zach said firmly. "People are already talking, Mrs. Zimmerman. We do not need to give them real ammunition." He was right, and Nora knew it, but it bothered her that doing something practical and sensible had to be avoided because of appearances. Still, she had learned long ago that a woman's reputation was fragile, easily shattered, nearly impossible to repair. Over the next days, Nora discovered that Zach was a man of his word. He rose before dawn and worked past dark, tackling the store's problems with systematic determination. He renegotiated terms with suppliers, his cowboy straightforwardness earning better deals than Nathaniel's formal business letters ever had. He reorganized the stockroom, making inventory tracking easier. He built new shelves and repaired old ones, his hands skilled with hammer and saw. Working alongside him, Nora found herself noticing small things. The way he always asked her opinion before making decisions, treating her as an equal partner rather than a woman who needed managing. The way he dealt patiently with difficult customers, never losing his temper or his courtesy. The way he sometimes smiled at something she said, a quick flash of warmth that made her pulse skip. She tried to ignore that last part. It was inappropriate, unprofessional, and frankly terrifying. She had been widowed barely 2 months. Whatever she felt was just gratitude mixed with exhaustion, nothing more. But late at night, alone in her room, she admitted the truth. Zachary Jennings was exactly the kind of man she should have married if life had given her choices. Young enough to share her energy and dreams, old enough to be responsible and steady. Hardworking, honest, respectful, and handsome in a quiet way that had nothing to do with vanity and everything to do with character showing in his face. She could not act on these feelings. She would not. They had a business arrangement, and she could not risk ruining it by introducing complicated emotions. Besides, Zach had given no indication of seeing her as anything more than a business partner. He was polite to the point of formality, always calling her Mrs. Zimmerman, always maintaining proper distance. The trouble was, proper distance became harder to maintain when they spent 12 hours a day working side by side. One afternoon, a freight wagon arrived with a delivery Zach had arranged, hardware and tools from a supplier in Santa Fe. Nora helped unload, both of them working in the heat, sweating and laughing when a box of horseshoes nearly rolled off the wagon bed. Zach caught it at the last moment, and Nora caught him, grabbing his arm to steady him. For just a second, they stood close enough that she could see gold flecks in his brown eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "Got it," Zach said, his voice slightly rough. Nora stepped back quickly. That was close. They finished unloading in silence, the easy camaraderie from moments before replaced with awkwardness. That evening, Zach made an excuse to skip dinner, saying he needed to check on something at the freight office. Nora ate alone, angry at herself for creating tension where none had existed before. The next morning, Martin Hendricks visited the store again. This time, Zach was present, restocking shelves while Nora managed the counter. Hendricks looked at Zach with barely concealed contempt. "I see you have taken on hired help, Mrs. Zimmerman. I hope you are not depleting funds that should be going toward your loan payment." "Mr. Jennings is my business partner, not hired help," Nora said. "And my financial arrangements are not your concern until the loan comes due." 3 weeks, Hendricks said. "I would hate to see you lose this property over foolish pride." Zach appeared at Nora's shoulder, moving so quietly she had not heard him approach. "The lady will have your money, Mr. Hendricks. Maybe you should spend less time worrying about her business and more time running your own." Hendricks' face flushed red. "You have no idea what you are talking about, boy." "I know threats when I hear them," Zach said evenly. "And I know the law. Mrs. Zimmerman has 3 weeks to pay what is owed. Until then, you have no claim on this property or her time. Good day." After Hendricks left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows, Nora turned to Zach. "You should not have antagonized him. He is a powerful man in this town." "He is a bully," Zach said. "Bullies respect strength, not submission. And we will have his money in 3 weeks, so his power does not matter." "Will we?" Nora asked, voicing the fear that kept her awake every night. "I have been calculating and recalculating, and I do not see how. Even with increased sales, even with the new arrangements you made with suppliers, the numbers do not add up." Zach leaned against the counter, his expression thoughtful. "What if we expanded, not the store itself, but what we offer?" "I do not understand." "There is no feed store in Tucumcari," Zach said. "Ranchers have to go to Santa Rosa or Amarillo for large orders of feed and grain. What if we brought that business here? I know ranching. I know what they need, and I know I could arrange good prices because of the volume we would be ordering." It was brilliant and risky in equal measure. That would require significant investment, space we do not have, contacts we do not have. "I have the contacts," Zach said. "As for space, what about the old livery stable next door? It has been empty since old Tom died last year. If we could lease it cheap, we could convert it into a feed depot." Nora's mind raced through possibilities. If the ranchers did not buy, we would be stuck with massive inventory and no way to pay for it. "They will buy," Zach said with confidence. "I am betting my 30% on it." It took 2 days to negotiate a lease on the stable, the owner willing to rent cheap, just to have someone using the building. It took another 3 days to arrange the first shipment of feed and grain, Zach calling in favors and making promises to suppliers he swore would trust him. During that time, he rode out to every ranch within a day's distance, talking to foremen and owners, building interest in the new service. Nora watched him work with a mixture of admiration and terror. He was gambling everything on this expansion, and if it failed, they would be worse off than before. But his confidence was infectious, his enthusiasm impossible to resist. She found herself believing they could actually succeed. The first shipment arrived on a Saturday morning, 3 wagons piled high with sacks of grain and bales of hay. Ranchers began showing up within hours, drawn by curiosity and Zach's salesmanship. By afternoon, they had sold half the inventory. By evening, Zach was taking orders for the next shipment. "This is going to work," Nora said that night, counting the day's receipts with shaking hands. "This is actually going to work." Zach grinned, looking younger and more carefree than she had seen him. "Told you to trust me." For the first time since Nathaniel's death, hope felt like more than a desperate wish. It felt real, solid, achievable. Nora smiled back at Zach, and in that moment, something shifted between them. The air felt charged, heavy with possibility. Zach's smile faded, replaced by something more serious, more intense. He reached across the counter, his hand moving toward hers, and Nora's breath caught. The bell above the door chimed, and they both jumped apart. A customer entered, oblivious to what they had interrupted, asking about prices on feed. Nora helped him while Zach retreated to the stockroom, and the moment was lost. But it lingered between them, unspoken and undeniable. Something was growing here beyond partnership, beyond business. Something that both terrified and thrilled Nora more than any risk they had taken with the store. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. The feed depot business exceeded even Zach's optimistic predictions. Ranchers appreciated the convenience and competitive prices, and word spread across the territory. Orders came in from spreads Zach had not even visited, drawn by reputation alone. The general store benefited too, as ranchers who came for feed often stocked up on other supplies while they were in town. Money came in, and for the first time, Nora could pay bills without anxiety, could order new inventory without fear. She tallied the numbers every night, watching the gap close between what they had and what they owed the bank. It would be close, desperately close, but they would make it. Zach worked himself to exhaustion, up before dawn to prepare feed orders, staying late to make deliveries to distant ranches. Nora worried about him, though she tried not to let it show. He had lost weight, his face more angular, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. When she insisted he take a day off, he refused. "We are so close. I can rest after we pay off Hendricks." The night before the bank note came due, Nora sat at the counter long after closing, running calculations one final time. They had the money, every dollar of the $1,500 they owed, plus a small cushion for emergencies. She had done it. They had done it. She heard Zach's footsteps behind her and turned to find him fresh from washing up at the pump in the back, his hair damp, his shirt clean. He looked as tired as she felt, but he was smiling. "Do we have it?" "We have it," Nora confirmed, her voice breaking on the words. Suddenly, all the tension and fear and exhaustion of the past months overwhelmed her. Tears spilled down her cheeks and she could not stop them. "Hey," Zach said softly, coming around the counter. "Hey, it is all right, we did it." "I know," Nora managed. I did not think we would. I was so scared we would fail, that I would lose everything, that I would let Nathaniel down." Zach pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. "You did not let anyone down. You fought like hell for this place and you won. You should be proud." Nora wiped her eyes, embarrassed by her outburst. "We won. I could not have done this without you, Zach. You saved the store. You saved me." "We saved each other," Zach said. "I needed this as much as you did, A purpose, a place to belong. You gave me that. They stood close in the quiet store, the lantern light casting soft shadows. Nora was acutely aware of every detail. The warmth of Zach's body, the concern in his eyes, the way his hand still rested lightly on her shoulder. She should step back, restore proper distance, but she could not make herself move. Nora, Zach said, her name rough on his tongue. It was the first time he had used her given name, and it sent a shiver through her. Yes. Her voice came out barely a whisper. I need to tell you something, and I have been holding back because of our partnership, because of what people would say, because of 100 reasons that suddenly do not seem to matter anymore. He took a breath. I am in love with you. I have been for weeks now, and I cannot keep pretending I am not. If you do not feel the same, I will understand, and I will never mention it again. But I needed you to know. Nora's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. I feel the same, she whispered. I've been trying not to, but I feel exactly the same. Zach's expression transformed, hope and joy and relief flooding his face. Really, really. He cupped her face in his hands, his calloused thumbs gentle against her cheeks. Can I kiss you? Instead of answering, Nora rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as weeks of suppressed longing broke free. Zach's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Nora melted into him, feeling safe and desired and fully alive for the first time in months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zach rested his forehead against hers. I have wanted to do that since the day I met you. Why did you wait so long? Nora asked, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Because I needed to prove myself worthy of you. Because I needed us to be equals, partners, not you desperate and me the savior. I wanted you to choose me, not need me. I choose you, Nora said, and I need you. Both can be true. They kissed again, longer this time, making up for lost time. When they finally separated, Zach took her hand, lacing their fingers together. We should probably talk about what this means, for the business, for us. Tomorrow, Nora said. Tonight, can we just be happy? Tomorrow, Zach agreed. They sat together on the floor behind the counter, Nora leaning against Zach's chest, his arms around her, talking quietly about everything and nothing. About their childhoods, their dreams, the lives that had led them to this moment. Zach told her about growing up on a small ranch in Texas, losing his parents to cholera when he was 15, working cattle trails for years, because he had nowhere else to go. Nora told him about her own losses, her parents, her marriage to Nathaniel, the loneliness she had hidden behind smiles and propriety. I cared for Nathaniel, Nora said, but I did not love him, not the way a wife should. That feels wrong to admit. It is not wrong, it is honest, Zach said. People marry for lots of reasons. Security, companionship, survival. Love is a luxury not everyone gets to choose. Is this love? Nora asked, turning to look at him. What we have, Zach's smile was tender. What do you think? I think it is, Nora said. I think it is exactly what love should be. They fell asleep there, wrapped in each other's arms, and woke to sunlight streaming through the front windows. For a moment, Nora felt disoriented. Then memory returned, and with it a rush of happiness, so intense it felt like flying. Zach stirred beside her, his arms tightening briefly before his eyes opened. Good morning, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Good morning, Nora replied, suddenly shy despite everything they had shared the night before. We have a bank note to pay, Zach said, though he made no move to get up. I suppose we do. They arrived at the bank precisely at opening, Nora carrying the money in a leather pouch, Zach at her side. Martin Hendricks could not quite hide his surprise when Nora counted out $1,500 in cash on his desk. This clears the debt in full, she said. I would like a receipt, please. Hendrick's face went through several expressions before settling on forced professionalism. "Of course, Mrs. Zimmerman, I must say I am impressed. I did not think you would manage it." "Then you underestimated me," Nora said pleasantly. "Many people do. It is always satisfying to prove them wrong." They walked out of the bank with the receipt, the sun bright on their faces, the future suddenly wide open. Zach took Nora's hand right there on Main Street, and she let him, no longer caring what anyone thought. "We did it," he said. "We did," Nora agreed. "So what comes next?" "I was hoping you might marry me," Zach said. "If you are willing." Nora stopped walking, staring at him. "You are proposing, right now in the middle of the street. Is that a problem?" "No, I just thought." Nora laughed. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Zach whooped and picked her up, spinning her around while Nora laughed and clung to his shoulders. People stopped to stare, and Nora did not care at all. When Zach set her down, he kissed her soundly. And if there was scandal in a widow kissing a cowboy on Main Street barely 3 months after her husband's death, Nora decided it was a scandal she could live with. They married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church, with half of Tucumcari in attendance. Nora wore a simple blue dress instead of white, a concession to her widowhood, but she carried wildflowers and smiled so brightly that everyone agreed they had never seen a happier bride. Zach wore his best clothes, looking nervous and proud in equal measure, and when he said his vows, his voice was steady and sure. "I promise to love you, honor you, and stand beside you in all things," he said. "I promise to be your partner in business and in life, to share your burdens and your joys. I promise to build a life with you worth living." Nora's vows were equally simple and heartfelt. "I promise to love you for exactly who you are, to trust in your strength and your kindness. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your home. I promise that wherever we go, whatever we build, we do it together." The reception was held behind the store in the space that had once been a weedy lot and was now a neat yard. People brought food, music, good wishes. Even Martin Hendricks attended, though his congratulations were stiff. Nora danced with Zach under the stars, feeling lighter than air, happier than she had imagined possible just months before. That night, alone finally in the living quarters that were now their shared home, Zach carried Nora over the threshold despite her laughing protests. "We are already inside," she said. "I know, but I wanted to do it properly." He set her down carefully, his hands lingering at her waist. "Are you happy?" deliriously, Nora said. "Are you?" "More than I have words for." Zach kissed her softly. "I love you, Mrs. Jennings." "I love you too," Nora said and led him to the bedroom, closing the door on the world outside. The months that followed were among the happiest of Nora's life. She and Zach worked side by side every day, their partnership in business deepening their partnership in marriage. They expanded the store further, adding new product lines, improving the feed depot, building a reputation for quality and service that drew customers from across the territory. Money was no longer a source of constant anxiety. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable and growing more so. More importantly, they were happy. Nora loved the rhythm of their days, the easy companionship, the way they could communicate with a glance across a crowded store. She loved their evenings, cooking dinner together, talking about the day, making plans for the future. She loved their nights, the intimacy and passion, the joy of being truly known and loved by another person. By fall, Nora suspected she might be pregnant. She waited to be certain before telling Zach, but he guessed anyway, noticing small changes before she said a word. "Are we having a baby?" he asked one morning, watching her push away breakfast feeling queasy. "I think so," Nora admitted. "Is that all right?" Zach's face lit up like sunrise. "All right, Nora, that is wonderful. That is the best news I have ever heard." The pregnancy was not easy. Nora was sick for months, exhausted and miserable, unable to work in the store as much as she wanted. Zach took on more responsibility without complaint, hiring a young man from town to help with the heavy work so he could spend time caring for Nora. He brought her crackers and tea, rubbed her aching back, held her hair when she was sick, and never once made her feel like a burden. "I am sorry," Nora said one evening, crying from frustration and hormones. "I am supposed to be your partner, and instead I am useless." "You are growing our child," Zach said firmly. "That is not useless, that is miraculous. And you are still my partner, just temporarily focused on a different project. The store will survive a few months without you at full capacity." Their son was born on a cold March morning in 1883, after a labor that terrified Zach and exhausted Nora. But when the midwife placed the squalling baby in Nora's arms, every moment of discomfort vanished, replaced by overwhelming love. The baby had Zach's eyes and Nora's dark hair, and he was perfect. "What should we name him?" Zach asked, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "What about your father's name?" Nora suggested. She knew how much Zach had loved his parents, how their loss still shaped him. "William," Zach said softly. "William Jennings, Will for short." He looked at Nora, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Thank you for him for everything." Nora smiled, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. "We made him together. That is how it should be." Will was an easy baby, quick to smile and slow to fuss. Nora marveled at the way Zach took to fatherhood, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor with Will when he could not sleep, making silly faces that sent the baby into gales of laughter. She had not known how much she wanted this, a real family built on love rather than convenience, until she had it. The store continued to thrive. The feed depot became one of the most successful businesses in Tucumcari, and the general store benefited from the increased traffic. Zach hired 2 more employees to help manage the workload, carefully choosing people who shared their values of hard work and fair dealing. Nora returned to work slowly, bringing Will with her, setting up a cradle behind the counter where he could sleep while she managed customers. Life settled into a comfortable pattern: work, family, community. Nora became involved in the church, helping organize charity drives and social events. Zach joined the town council, using his business acumen to help guide Tucumcari's growth. They bought the building that housed the store, no longer beholden to rent. They renovated the living quarters, adding space for their growing family, because their family was growing. When Will was 2, Nora became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier, and their daughter arrived on a sunny September day, smaller than Will had been but equally perfect. They named her Rose, and she had her father's smile and her mother's determination. 2 children, Zach said one evening, holding Rose while Will played at their feet. "I never thought I would have this. A family, a home, a purpose. You gave me all of that." "We gave it to each other," Nora corrected, leaning against his shoulder. "That is what makes it real." The years passed, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The store weathered economic downturns and harsh winters, competition from new businesses and changing markets. But Nora and Zach faced everything together, their partnership tested and strengthened by time. They disagreed sometimes, even argued occasionally, but they never stopped talking, never stopped working through problems as a team. Will grew into a bright, curious boy who loved helping in the store, already showing signs of his father's head for business. Rose was a whirlwind of energy and opinions, keeping her parents on their toes. When Will was 7 and Rose 5, Nora became pregnant once more, surprising them both. "I thought we were done," she said, half laughing, half crying when the doctor confirmed it. "Apparently not," Zach said, pulling her into his arms. "Is this all right? I know 3 is a lot." "It is perfect," Nora said and meant it. "Everything is perfect." Their third child, another boy they named Thomas after Nathaniel's middle name in a gesture of respect for the man whose death had brought them together, was born in the spring of 1890. By then, Nora was 32 and Zach 28, still young but feeling older, weighted with the responsibilities of business and family, but weighted in the best way. Nora sometimes thought about the terrified widow she had been 8 years ago, struggling alone, convinced she would lose everything. That woman felt like a stranger now. She had become someone she liked better, stronger, happier, more sure of herself and her place in the world. One evening, when Thomas was sleeping and the older children were in bed, Nora and Zach sat on the porch behind the store, watching the sunset paint the New Mexico sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Do you ever regret it?" Nora asked. "Staying here, tying yourself to the store to me?" Zach looked at her as if she had lost her mind. "Regret the best decision I ever made. Regret finding love and purpose and a family, not for a single second. You could have had adventure," Nora persisted. "You could have kept drifting, seen the world, been free." "I have adventure," Zach said. "Every day with you and our children is an adventure. And I am free, Nora. Freer than I ever was riding alone. Freedom is not about going wherever you want. It is about being exactly where you are supposed to be." Nora leaned into him, letting his warmth and certainty soothe the insecurities she rarely voiced but never quite escaped. "Where are we supposed to be?" "Right here," Zach said simply. "Together." The store continued to grow over the years. Zach's feed depot expanded to include farm equipment and supplies, becoming a regional hub that drew customers from hundreds of miles away. The general store evolved too, adding ready-made clothing, books, even toys as demand grew. They hired more staff, eventually employing a dozen people, becoming one of the largest employers in Tucumcari. With success came influence. Zach served multiple terms on the town council and was eventually elected mayor, a position he held for 6 years. Nora became known for her charity work, organizing relief efforts during droughts, helping struggling families, teaching other women basic business skills. Together, they became pillars of the community, respected and liked in equal measure. Their children grew. Will showed every sign of following in his parents' footsteps, already talking about taking over the business one day. Rose announced at age 12 that she had no interest in storekeeping and planned to become a teacher, a declaration that made both parents proud even as it upended their assumptions. Thomas was still young, sweet-natured and artistic, drawing pictures of everything he saw. When Will turned 18 in 1901, he officially became a partner in the business, his name added to the sign above the store, Jennings General Store and Feed Depot. It was Zach's idea to remove Zimmerman from the name after nearly 20 years, but he consulted Nora first. "I do not want to erase Nathaniel's memory," he said carefully, "but this is our business now, built by our work. What do you think?" Nora thought about Nathaniel, dead for almost 2 decades now. She remembered him with fondness but no longer with guilt or grief. He had been a good man who gave her shelter when she needed it, but Zach had given her something far more precious: partnership, passion, true love. "I think Jennings is the right name," she said. "Nathaniel would understand." They held a ceremony for the new sign, the whole town turning out to celebrate. Will stood between his parents, grinning with pride, while Rose and Thomas watched from the crowd. Nora looked at her family, at the business they had built, at the community they had helped shape, and felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not always easy, but real and earned and shared. Rose left for college in Santa Fe when she turned 18, the first in either family to pursue higher education. Nora cried when she left, pride and sadness tangled together. "She is going to do amazing things," Zach said, holding Nora as they watched the train pull away. "I know," Nora said. "I just wish I could watch all of it happen." "We will," Zach assured her. "She will come home and tell us everything." Thomas showed unexpected talent as an artist, his drawings evolving into paintings that captured the stark beauty of New Mexico. When he was 15, a gallery in Santa Fe offered to display his work. Nora and Zach closed the store for a week to attend the opening, watching their youngest son nervously greet admirers, seeing him begin to believe in his own gifts. "3 children, 3 completely different paths," Nora marveled. "We did all right, I think." "Better than all right," Zach said. "We raised them to be themselves, to chase their dreams. That is all any parent can do." The new century brought changes. The railroad expanded, bringing more people and commerce to Tucumcari. Automobiles began appearing on the streets, strange, noisy contraptions that Zach viewed with suspicion and Nora found fascinating. The store adapted as it always had, adding automobile supplies and gasoline pumps, evolving with the times. Zach's hair went gray at the temples, then white. Lines appeared at the corners of his eyes, around his mouth, marks of a life spent smiling and working in the sun. Nora's dark hair developed silver threads, and her hands showed the signs of decades of labor. They wore their age comfortably, earning it together. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Zach closed the store for the day, something he almost never did. He took Nora on a picnic to the creek where he had camped the day they met, the same spot where he had waited for her answer about becoming partners. They sat under the same cottonwood tree, older now but still standing, and shared a meal and memories. "You remember what I said that first day?" Zach asked. "About wanting to stay in one place and build something." "I remember," Nora said. "I thought you were crazy, offering to work for nothing but a promise of future profits." "I was a little crazy," Zach admitted. "Crazy in love, though I did not realize it yet. I took one look at you fighting so hard to save that store, refusing to give up even when anyone sensible would have, and I knew you were someone special. I had to find a way to stay near you." "So the partnership was just an excuse," Nora teased. "The partnership was practical," Zach said. "You needed help, I needed a purpose. But yes, even then, some part of me knew I was not just investing in a business. I was investing in you, in us, in a future I could barely imagine but desperately wanted." Nora leaned against him, comfortable and content. "I am glad you stayed." "Me too," Zach said. "Every single day, I am glad I stayed." They sat in companionable silence, watching the creek flow past, feeling the weight of 2 decades together, the substance of a life built on love and work and partnership. 20 years ago, Nora had been a desperate widow facing ruin. 20 years ago, Zach had been a drifter looking for somewhere to belong. Together, they had become so much more than either could have been alone. Will married at 22, bringing a sweet young woman named Clara into the family. They gave Nora and Zach their first grandchild, a girl named Nora after her grandmother. And suddenly, the future felt even more real and precious. Rose became a teacher as planned, eventually becoming a principal, changing lives through education the way her parents had changed lives through business. Thomas's paintings grew in reputation, his art selling across the country, though he chose to keep his studio in Tucumcari, unwilling to leave home permanently. The store remained the center of their world. Even as Zach and Nora officially retired and Will took over daily management, they could not quite stay away. They came in most mornings, puttering around, greeting old customers, offering advice when asked. The store had been their partnership from the beginning, the foundation on which they had built everything else. It felt right to remain part of it. On their 30th anniversary, the town threw them a celebration, honoring their contributions to Tucumcary's growth and prosperity. People gave speeches about what Nora and Zach had meant to the community, stories about kindness and fairness and the second chances they had given others. Nora cried through most of it, overwhelmed by love and gratitude. "We just did what needed doing," she said when called on to speak. "We worked hard, we treated people right, and we never gave up on each other or this town. That is not heroism. That is just life, lived as well as we knew how." But it was heroism in the everyday sense. The heroism of showing up each day, of choosing love and partnership over and over again, of building something meaningful and lasting. Nora and Zach had turned desperation into hope, partnership into love, a struggling store into a thriving legacy. They had raised 3 children who would go into the world and make it better. They had supported a community and been supported in return. As they grew older, slowing down but never quite stopping, they found joy in simple things. Grandchildren's visits, quiet mornings with coffee on the porch, watching Tucumcary continue to grow and change. They held hands constantly, a habit from their early days that never faded, finding comfort in touch, in the reminder that they were not alone. When Zach turned 60 in 1913, he admitted to Nora that he was tired, truly tired in a way he had not been before. "I think it is time to really retire," he said. "Let will have the business completely, let the young people take over. We have earned some rest. What would we do?" Nora asked, though she felt the same weariness, the sense that they had fought long enough and could finally lay down their burdens. "Whatever we want," Zach said. "Travel maybe. Visit Rose in Santa Fe, see the paintings Thomas is working on. Spend time with the grandchildren, sleep late." He grinned. "Mostly sleep late." They made it official, transferring full ownership of the store to Will. It was bittersweet, letting go of something they had built and nurtured for over 3 decades, but also freeing. For the first time in their lives together, they had no obligations beyond what they chose. They did travel, though not far. They visited Santa Fe and Albuquerque, saw the ocean in California, took a train to Denver. But they always came home to Tucumcary, to the house behind the store, to the place they had built their life. Some roots went too deep to ever truly pull free. Zach's health began declining in his mid-60s. Nothing dramatic, but a slow fading that worried Nora deeply. He still smiled, still laughed, still held her hand and told her he loved her every day. But he moved slower, tired more easily, seemed to be preparing for something he did not name. "I am not afraid," he told her one evening as they sat watching another sunset. "I have had the most wonderful life, more than I ever imagined possible. If my time is coming, I am ready." "I am not ready," Nora said fiercely. "I will never be ready to lose you." "You would not lose me," Zach said gently. "I will always be with you, in every corner of this town, in our children, in the life we built. You cannot lose something that has become part of you." He died in his sleep on a clear November night in 1918, Nora beside him, his hand in hers. One moment he was breathing, peaceful and calm, and the next he was simply gone. Nora sat with him for a long time before calling for the doctor, memorizing his face, saying goodbye to the man who had been her partner, her love, her home for 36 years. The funeral was the largest Tucumcary had ever seen. People came from across New Mexico to pay respects to the cowboy who had become a pillar of the community, who had shown by example what partnership and dedication could accomplish. They told stories about Zach's fairness, his kindness, his dry humor and unwavering integrity. They spoke of what he had meant to the town, to his family, to everyone lucky enough to know him. Nora stood among her children and grandchildren, supported by their love but hollowed out by grief. The world felt emptier without Zach in it, dimmer and colder and profoundly wrong. But she would survive, because that was what they had always done. Survived, adapted, carried on. In the months after, Nora found comfort in unexpected places. In the store, where every corner held memories of working beside Zach. In the accounts books, where his neat handwriting recorded decades of partnership. In the stories people told, keeping his memory alive. In her children, who had his eyes or his smile or his generous heart. She lived another 12 years, watching her grandchildren grow, meeting her great-grandchildren, seeing the store continue to thrive under Will's management. She never remarried, never even considered it. She had married for convenience once and for love once, and the love had been enough for a lifetime. She told stories about Zach constantly, to anyone who would listen. About the day he rode into town and offered to work for nothing but faith. About how they had saved the store together, built an empire from desperation and determination. About their wedding, their children, the 1,000 tiny moments that had made up their life together. She wanted everyone to know what they had been, what they had accomplished, how much they had loved. On a spring morning in 1930, Nora woke feeling lighter than she had since Zach died. She rose, dressed, made her way to the cemetery on the edge of town. She sat beside Zach's grave, running her fingers over the stone they had chosen together years before, when they were planning for every eventuality. "I think I am ready now," she said aloud, talking to him as she still did every day. "I have been fighting so long, missing you so much, but I am ready to rest. The children are settled, the business is strong, everything we built will continue. I can let go." She felt at peace as she walked back home, stopping by the store to say hello to Will, to see the latest improvements, to feel the connection to everything she and Zach had created. That night, she went to bed in the room they had shared, holding the photograph of them from their wedding day, and she did not wake up. They buried her beside Zach, the way she had requested. Their children commissioned a larger stone to mark both graves, with an inscription they debated for weeks before finding the perfect words. Zachary and Nora Jennings, partners in life, love, and legacy together, they built a dream. The store still stands in Tucumcari, though it has changed hands and names over the decades. But old-timers remember the Jennings, remember the widow and the cowboy who became partners and then something more. They tell the story to newcomers, keeping the legend alive. The desperate woman who refused to give up, the wandering man who found home. The partnership that became love, that became legacy. Their great-great-grandchildren still live in Tucumcari, carrying on the family name and the values Nora and Zach instilled. Hard work, fair dealing, the importance of partnership and community. The blood of a widow and a cowboy flows through them, mixed now with dozens of other stories, other lives, but still carrying something essential forward, because that is what love does. It builds things that last beyond a single lifetime. It creates ripples that spread wider than we can see. Nora and Zach could not have imagined, that first day they met across the counter of a struggling store, what they would build together. But they did it anyway, one day at a time, one decision at a time, choosing each other and their partnership over and over until choice became nature. Their story became part of Tucumcari's history, part of the fabric of the town they helped build. The general store owner died, his widow struggled, and a cowboy became her partner. But that was just the beginning. The real story was in what came after. The love they built, the family they raised, the community they strengthened, the legacy they left behind. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth carrying forward into whatever future awaited. Because at its heart, it was a simple story, the kind that happens everywhere if people are brave enough to take chances on each other. A story about finding home in another person, about partnership and possibility, about refusing to give up even when giving up would be easier. It was a story about love in all its forms, the desperate kind that accepts help when pride says refuse, the growing kind that develops slowly between two people working toward a common goal, the passionate kind that takes your breath and changes everything, the enduring kind that survives loss and time and carries on beyond death. Nora and Zach's love story ended, as all stories must, with death and loss and the bittersweet ache of remembering. But it also never ended, because what they built together continued. In the store that still served the community, in the children and grandchildren who carried their values forward, in the town they had helped shape, in the countless small ways their choices had rippled outward, touching lives they would never know. On quiet evenings in Tucumcari, when the sun sets gold and crimson over the plains, old folks sometimes sit on their porches and tell the story of Nora and Zach Jennings. They tell it to teach lessons about partnership and perseverance. They tell it because it is a good story, the kind that makes you believe in possibilities. But mostly they tell it because some love stories are too beautiful to let die, too meaningful to forget. And so Nora and Zach live on, not in the flesh but in memory and legacy, in the values they embodied and the example they set. The widow who refused to quit, the cowboy who chose to stay, the partnership that saved them both and became something neither could have achieved alone. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the money they made or the business they built, important as those were. What mattered was that two people found each other when they both desperately needed finding, that they chose partnership over pride, love over loneliness, possibility over safety, that they built something real and lasting and beautiful from desperation and determination and simple human connection. That was the real happy ending, the one that mattered, the one worth telling and retelling until the words wore smooth as river stones. Because that is what happy endings really are, not perfect lives free from struggle, but lives filled with love and meaning and purpose. Lives where two people face the world together and make it better by their presence. Nora and Zach Jennings had that kind of life. They had that kind of love. And in having it, in building it day by day and choice by choice, they created something that would outlast them both, rippling forward through time, touching lives they would never know, proving that even in the hardest times, even when everything seems lost, love and partnership and stubborn determination can build miracles. Their story was complete, their ending as happy as any ending can be in a world where death is inevitable, but love, real love, proves stronger than death. They lived, they loved, they built, and they left the world better than they found it. What more could any love story ask for? What more could any life achieve in the quiet evening of Tucumcari? If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the echo of their laughter, the sound of their voices planning tomorrow's work, the whisper of hands clasped in partnership and love. The store that started it all still stands, a monument to what two people can build when they refuse to give up on each other or themselves. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Nora and Zach are still together, still partners, still building their dreams side by side. Because some partnerships transcend even death, some love stories never truly end, and some legacies live forever in the hearts and lives of those who come after. That was their gift to the world, their contribution to the great story humanity tells itself. Proof that love matters, that partnership matters, that two people together really can change everything. In the dusty streets of a small New Mexico town, a widow and a cowboy became partners, then lovers, then legends. And the story they created together continues, as all great love stories do, forever.